It's time for another Dirt Daily, and I'm getting so close to wrapping up Newb Sock. In fact, I was supposed to be on the road today to go to Ultimate Adventure, but we had a few minor setbacks. When I got these axles from my buddy, I was under the impression that the front was a 513 ring and pinion and the rear was a 513 ring and pinion. Somewhere there was a miscommunication breakdown, or maybe just a communication breakdown, or maybe just a breakdown. And I just about had a breakdown because I figured out that the rear axle is 410s and the front axle is 513s. Which, it's really kind of ironic that I even figured this out. I was working on the front axle and it has a little tag on the diff cover that says 513. And for some reason I was like, I wonder if the rear axle has a tag. And I went back and I looked at it and it had no tag. And that got me thinking. I was like, well, and then I turned the pinion and I was like, the wheels are turning around really fast. I feel like the wheels should turn slower for every rotation of the pinion. So then I went and found the part number that was on the crate. I looked it up. This is a Rubicon rear end that has 410s. You really don't want 410s in one axle and 513s in another axle, because when you put it in four-wheel drive, they will turn at different speeds and you can blow up your transfer case, or a ring and pinion or a drive shaft. Something is probably not going to be happy about it. Someone was like, well, can't you run different size tires? Well, in order to compensate with this at 410s and that at 513s, those would have to be 37s and these would have to be 29s. So no, you can't really do that. I mean, you can run different size tires. We have done it in the past on the Mad Maxxis Off-Road Runner, where we wanted big tires in the back and little ones in the front. And so we geared it specifically to do this. Doing it the other way is kind of silly looking, to have little tires and big tires in the front. And honestly, I was just like, I just need to have a set of 513s here. So I talked to my buddy at Motive Gear. This is my buddy Eric. He's been on Dirt Every Day a few times. He was there when we did the Cheap Truck Challenge with the XJs, and also when we did the Cheap Truck Challenge kind of overlanding deal. And Eric works for a company called Motive Gear, and he was like, I got you covered. Boom! A set of 513s, overnighted, got here just in time. So I need to get those gears in this Jeep. And I'm coming down to the wire on getting everything done. And I talked to a local transmission gear shop, and my buddy over there is like, bring it over. We'll get them in there. It'll take a couple hours. We'll be set up. So, which is great, because even though I have done gears in the past and I know how to do gears, I don't feel like I'm a gear guy. And I've never messed with the new Dana Advantech 44 with the E-locker. And so I was like, if I can find somebody that can help me out quick. So, end of the story, Newb Sock goes to the gear shop tomorrow to get new gears slammed in it, and then we're hitting the road. But until then, I need to finish up everything so that it's ready to get on the trailer and get over to the gear shop. I put the rear drive shaft in earlier. I was just kind of installed it on the transfer case. That's back out. Now we only have the drive shaft going to the front. I put all the rear suspension together. I used the Synergy coils, the 2-inch 2-door coils, which is the same as their 1-inch lift 4-door coil, which is actually a lift over the Rubicon height, because the Rubicon already lifts the Jeep a little bit, and then the Synergy is an additional inch. So this is probably close to a 3-inch on the Sport version, which this is, which I'm hoping is just fine for 37s. I put the SDI E-Click rear shocks on, and I wired those all in. I put on the Rock Jock anti-rock sway bar. I put on the bump stop extension, and I raised up the track bar mount. So I feel like the rear suspension, I went through and I torqued everything, I tightened it all up, I hooked up the speed sensors. I feel like the rear end is buttoned up and ready to go on tires and sit on the ground. The rock sliders are done. The skid plates are done. All of the wiring is done except for one front locker, because the wiring harness that I ordered 2 of, 1 showed up. So now I need to wait for the other one to show up so I can finish the front locker wiring. Pretty minor, because all you got to do is plug it in, run the wires safely and securely up to that S-pod, put 2 terminals on them, put them on the S-pod. We'll have working lockers. Cross your fingers, knock on wood. So what is left? We have to finish up the front end. And what I'm going to do up there is I'm going to bolt the tires on. I'm going to try and set the toe. You really only want about a 1/16 of an inch toe in on these JLs. That's what I'm told. Then I am going to tighten up the track bar so that once I have the toe set, the track bar is dialed. Then I'm going to adjust the drag link so the steering wheel is straight and the tires are pointed straight. So everything's straight, everything's happy. And I also have to double check, make sure all the jam nuts on the front are tight, which I'm pretty sure they are. There might be one that I wasn't able to get to because of the lift. Oh, I need to bleed the rear brakes because we did swap the calipers on that. The rear bumper is on. My cool little tailgate table is on. The front bumper is on. The front winch is on. The front off-road lights are on. What else? The radio from Rugged Radios is on. The spare tire is in the back because my swing out tire carrier got lost in transit and I don't know where it is. So luckily a 37 fits pretty good inside the back. So I just strapped that in. And what else am I missing? What am I missing? I think that's it. Drive shafts from Tom Woods. I'm going to bolt in the other drive shaft. Well, we will have to change the pinion flange to a different flange to go to the rear drive shaft. So we'll have that done when we do the gears. I don't know, man. It's like that 12th hour when you're supposed to leave like a day ago and you're like scrambling and trying to remember everything and make sure you did everything and everything's, all your I's are crossed and your T's are dotted. But I think we are pretty good. Yeah. So I'm going to lower it down. I'm going to put tires on the rear. Don't forget to use some anti-seize. I've got some wheel spacers from Spider Tracks, but I don't think I'm going to need those. Those was kind of like a cautionary purchase. There's a little spot back here where there might be like a plastic piece that goes right like beside the shocks. I need to see if that's going to fit or if I even want it. I put the inner fender wells back in on the front. Some of those little plastic Christmas tree plugs that go in, those broke. So I got to find a set of those. But it's all screwed in and should be good. Yeah, I'm pretty stoked. It's coming together. Let's lower it down, put some tires on it, get this thing dialed in and see what it looks like, because tomorrow morning it needs to go to get some gears. Oh, the other thing. This has the E-lockers front and rear, and apparently you don't have to change your E-locker if you're going from 410s to 513s. I'm not sure if the Advantech doesn't have a gear split or if it's like below 410, but, and when I say below 410, I mean numerically below, but you can use the same E-locker with 410s and 513s. So I'm told. Well, cross your fingers, dot your I's, knock on wood. So tomorrow that should go, that should all be dialed in. I ran all the wiring for the shocks. I think I'm just rambling now. Let's get this thing on the ground, put some tires on it, get the steering dialed in, and get ready to get it out of here. All right. I'm bolting on the Mopar wheels. One thing that I like about these wheels, I mean, there's lots of things I like about these wheels, but something that I think is great that a lot of wheel companies don't remember to do is these wheels have really big bolt holes. Oh, come on, get on there. So that when you're putting on lug nuts, like these lug nuts require a 7/8 socket to run them in, and a lot of wheels, they'll have like a recessed area for the lug nuts, but it won't be big enough to fit a big, like, standard socket in. You'll have to use some sort of aftermarket-y thin wall socket. Remember, I'm just using this to get it started. One click. We're going to come back and torque all these. Here's the other thing that's kind of neat. I don't know that I've ever had wheels that I consciously wanted to run on a trail rig and run the center caps. But these wheels have cool little Jeep center caps. Like, they're specifically for this. Boom! And they look cool. The tires do stick out past the fender. Probably one, like the outer chunk of the tread is outside, which I don't really mind. I like that because when you're wheeling, I was cutting my head off. When you're wheeling, if you come up to a tree or tree stump, this will help keep the tree off the body and off the flare. So I kind of like it to have the tires stick out a little bit. Some people don't because it gets stuff muddy. Just don't drive in the mud if you don't want to get muddy. Duh. Wise words from old man Fred. When I'm putting tires and wheels on an axle, I like to put anti-seize on the threads of the wheel studs. If you're putting wheel spacers on, then you use Loctite. When I'm just using wheels, I put anti-seize on. The last thing you want to do is cross thread or mess up the threads of your lug nuts. And the anti-seize seems to help with that. Also, this axle has like a centering hub that goes into the aluminum wheels. And I put just a little bit of anti-seize on there so that everything jives together nice and smooth. I find it's easiest for me to lift the wheel with my toes. So I can sit down here. Ow, ow, ow. There we go. There we go. And it goes right in there. This is also a good time to double check that all of your steering clears and everything else. I threw some tires on the front of the Jeep, and now I'm going to try and set the toe. The toe is how your tires in the front, whether or not they point in or point out. And most of the time you want them to point in. I've always gone about 1/8 of an inch. Some people say on the JL you should go to 1/16 of an inch. But I'm measuring off of tires, which are rubber, which have been cast in a mold. So everything might be off a little bit. But the idea being that you want the front measurement here to be 1/16 of an inch narrower than at the same spot on the back of the tires. And you adjust that by lengthening or shortening the tie rod. And in this case, this is the RockJock Correct Link tie rod. And you can either rotate the whole thing and adjust it, or you can use this simple double adjuster dingus right here. And as you turn that in or turn it out, it will thread in and also thread in or out on the tie rod end that runs into it. So the first thing I did was I tried to find a spot that was identical from side to side. So you see how this sort of reverse F shape kicks out and there's a white line right there. I'm going to measure from right there. And then I'm going to come over to the opposite tire on the exact same spot and see what type of measurement we have. 68 1/8. If you don't believe me, I'll measure it this way. Hook that right on there. Come on over here. 68 1/8. So now you want to go, and you want to do this in a perfect world right in line with the axle tube, or even a little bit high because your casters lean back a little. And so you kind of want it on the front and back of the plane of where the knuckles steer. So we'll even go up one. and we'll see what this one says. 68 and 1/8. Okay, so now going back, you want to measure on that same, like I call it the middle internal lug. This is the outer lug, that's the outer internal lug, and that's the outer external lug. So inner in, middle out, outer out. So we're going middle in. Let's go to the back side and see what it says. So we grab our tape measure, we find the exact same lug, and we measure from this across to a matcher, and that says 68 1/4. So the internal, this in the front here was 68 and 1/8. One more time, double check, measure twice, measure nice. Straight across, 68 1/4. Man, I'm gonna call that good. Full disclosure, I adjusted it a little bit off camera because it was way out of whack. It was like 71 in the front and 65 in the back, and it was like bang, which is wrong. You want it to be like just a little in, and you want it to be a little in so that as you steer, it wants to return to center. You don't want it a lot in, and you don't want it a lot out. You want it just a little bit towed in. So once we've got that, now I can tighten up this lock. This is like a clevis that locks and clamps everything together. I rolled it up to the top so that a little bit more ground clearance, a little less to smash. And then I'm also going to get this steering stabilizer tightened up and buttoned up and do that up high so that it doesn't get smashed. Let's see, metric, yes, 18, yes. How about the back one? Must be 19. It's funny. I can work on a brand new car for weeks, months, and I still won't ever have the right metric wrench in my hand. If it's an old one, I can look at it and be like, oh, that's 1/2 inch, that's 3/4, that's 9/16. Metric stuff, no. It could be a 18 one day and a 21 the next day, and I'll still just be like, what? What is that? What is this? So make sure this stuff is good and tight and not going to come loose, because steering is not something you want to have fail. Gosh. All right, one more. All right, that's tight. Throw this guy on here and tighten this one up. Sweet. Now I can tighten this nut and those 4 nuts on the back of those U-bolts and hold the steering stabilizer in place, and then we will adjust the drag link based on the steering wheel. Final step is adjusting the drag link. I went inside and set the steering wheel so that it says Jeep and it's level. And when I did that, I came out and I looked at the tires, and the tires looked like they were turned a little bit towards the passenger, just a little. So there's an adjuster in there, and you turn that and it'll either pull them together or push them apart. So what I want is I want the steering wheel to stay level, but I want the steering to kind of come over a little bit towards the driver. So I'm going to probably do whatever it takes to shorten the drag link just a little, and that ought to get it into spec. So to adjust that, probably the easiest thing is a pipe wrench, because it's like a metal sleeve that threads onto the drag link. This step is really best once you're driving it, because you can get the tires, you can point the car straight and see if the steering wheel is straight, and if it's not, then you adjust it. I'm kind of eyeballing it now to get us as close as possible. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but for now, I'm going to tighten up those 2 bolts that lock everything in place. All right, I tightened the drag link, I tightened the tie rod, I extended some steering stops, I adjusted the steering stabilizer so that it's in the middle of its stroke. When the steering is in the middle, I turn it all the way one way, I turn it all the way the other way, so it's clear. I double checked all of the jam nuts on the sway bar links, and I double checked the track bar bolts. I grabbed my little flashlight and I went and looked at every fastener and made sure every fastener's bottomed out. Made sure the vent hose is on. Made sure the track bar is bolted. Made sure all of the upper and lower ball joints and all of the steering bolts had cotter pins in it. I double checked all of the links. Everything looks tight. The drive shaft looks good. The suspension in the rear, everything's tight back here. All the wires for the shocks are routed good. The rear speed sensors in the rear locker is wired, even though it's not final plugged because it's going to have to come back out. I'm basically gone over the whole thing, double checked all the jam nuts, and it is time to move the jack stands out from under Newb Sock and put it on the ground. Tomorrow it goes and gets gears. In order to get gears, it's going to have to drive on the trailer on the front drive shaft only. The rear, I'm only going out the door and onto the trailer. I think it's ready. Shocks are wired. Whoever heard of wiring your shocks? That's a thing now. And it's basically an electric car. It has electric shocks. It has electric lights. It has electric lockers. It has electric radios. It has lots of electric. Come on. Let's go to the ground. Let's see how this thing looks. I'm really excited. It's going to sit low. It's going to look cool. Oh, I need to run around and torque all the lug nuts. At least double check the front ones, because they're probably never coming off again until I'm four-wheeling. Probably wouldn't hurt to make sure the rears are torqued as well. I'm so excited. Look at it. Look, it's going to just keep getting lower and lower and lower. What do you think? Is it going to be taller or shorter than Tube Sock? Tube Sock is literally right here, right off camera. But Tube Sock is on 38s and Newb Sock is only on 37s. I kind of think it's going to be taller. Tube Sock's pretty low slung. The Jeep is on the ground. Let's close the hood. Oh, there's a couple other things still need done. The shocks need calibrated, and there is a programmer that I need to use to tell the Jeep that it has different gears. It doesn't have a front axle disconnect, doesn't have a backup camera, it doesn't have all the things that it's probably going to be looking for. Well, here is the hood of Newb Sock, my calibrated arm. It's still taller than Tube Sock. Tube Sock is the granddaddy of little white Jeeps. Actually, I do have I have two older white Jeeps. I have a YJ that's white, and I have a CJ 2A or CJ 3A, old blue, which is actually a white Jeep. I have lots of white Jeeps. So I thought Tube Sock sat low. Newb Sock is definitely not as low, but check it out. Boom. What a cool Jeep. Let's get it off the lift and roll it out here. Ha! Brakes are super squishy because I need to bleed the rear brakes. I don't have anybody here to help me with that. But I put it in low range and it moved under its own power, which is awesome. Tomorrow we'll go and get 513s put in the rear, and I don't know, look at it. It's pretty cool. I'm pretty stoked. This is a pretty cool little Jeep. Oh, one more thing. I 100% have to thank my buddy Eric from Motive Gear. He's the one that really saved my bacon by getting those gears to me in time so that I can finish this thing and get on the road to Ultimate Adventure. All right, thanks Eric. That's it for this Dirt Daily. Next time you see this Jeep, it should be re-geared and we should be heading to Ultimate Adventure. Hopefully, cross your fingers, knock on wood.